All right, buckle up because today we're diving headfirst into the world of Palo Alto City Council meetings.
And let me tell you, these minutes were a wild ride.
Seriously, June 2024 was a roller coaster for Palo Alto, and these two meetings we're looking at, they capture it all.
It's like that moment when a hyperlocal issue suddenly becomes everyone's obsession.
Exactly. You get passionate pleas, unexpected alliances, the whole shebang. Think of it as a binge-worthy drama, but instead of actors, it's your city council.
And the best part is, these meetings give us this amazing window into how decisions get made, how policies actually come to life.
Right. So imagine this. June 3rd, the meeting kicks off, and it's all sunshine and roses.
The calm before the storm, you might say.
Totally. We're talking about Palo Alto honoring its very own C-SPAN student cam winners, Brendan, Emily, Max, Ethan. These kids are making incredible films, and the whole city's beaming with pride.
It's a classic move, right? Start with some good news, get everyone feeling warm and fuzzy before things inevitably take a turn.
And boy, do they ever. Public comment time rolls around, and suddenly we're hearing this desperate plea from Living Wisdom High School.
Talk about a reality check.
Right. They're crammed into a corner of Cubberley, and there's this empty classroom, K4, just sitting there mocking them.
It really highlights those resource battles that happen all the time in local government.
So true. And as if that wasn't enough drama for one meeting, people start stepping up to address what they saw as straight-up racism at the previous meeting.
Yeah.
They're demanding action, real change, not just lip service.
Which is huge, right? It shows how national conversations about race and equality trickle down to the local level, even in a place like Palo Alto.
And to their credit, the council doesn't shy away from this. Council member Lithcott Hames even gives a shout out to the Sibling Cities program, reminding everyone about global connections and all.
Always good for a little perspective.
Right. But then hold on tight, because things take a turn when we get to the consent calendar.
Ah, yes, the consent calendar, where things can get surprisingly spicy.
For those who don't speak fluent city council, the consent calendar is usually just a list of items that get approved in one go, no debate, very efficient.
Streamlining at its finest. Or at least that's the idea.
But not so fast. Council members Koo and Tanaka had other plans. They both voted no on the whole thing, and that, my friend, is a power move.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like saying, hold up, these issues deserve more than a rubber stamp.
Exactly. And Koo, in particular, was concerned about a few items, like a development on San Antonio Road. Changes to the Historic Resources Board stuff she felt needed a closer look.
Which tells us something about her priorities right out of the gate.
For sure. And speaking of priorities, remember those University Avenue streetscape improvements everyone's been buzzing about?
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Well, get ready for Battle Royale, because the fight for the soul of University Avenue is on.
It's like this microcosm of the bigger debates happening everywhere. Do we prioritize cars or people, preservation or progress?
And finding that balance is like walking a tightrope during an earthquake.
Preach. And what people often forget is that behind all the zoning jargon and policy debates, there are real people with real stories.
Like La Comida, right. They've been serving up amazing meals to seniors for ages, but they desperately need a permanent home.
And their quest for space at 445 Bryant Street, it's heartbreaking, really.
Because they're pouring their hearts out, talking about serving seniors, building community, and you can see some council members drawing comparisons to Avenidas, which seems to have this cozy little arrangement with the city.
And that right there, that's where the questions of fairness and transparency come in.
Totally. Why does one group get the red carpet while others are struggling just to keep the lights on?
$1 million question. And as if things weren't complicated enough, 445 Bryant also happens to be on the short list for a potential teen center.
Which would be amazing. But then those pesky budget concerns come creeping back in.
Because of course they do.
Right. It's a classic case of too many needs, not enough resources. So we've got classroom battles, accusations of racism, a potential power struggle on the council, and the future of University Avenue hanging in the balance.
And that's just the first act.
Okay, so we're back in the thick of it, Juneteenth, and this meeting, oh man, this meeting throws us a curveball right out of the gate.
Talk about a change of pace.
Remember all the drama from last time, classroom shortages, budget showdowns, the fate of University Avenue hanging by a thread.
High stakes, big decisions.
Right. Well, this time we're kicking things off with Donkey fundraising.
You can't make this stuff up.
Apparently, Mayor Stone is on a mission to give Perry the donkey the 30th birthday bash of the century.
Bury the donkey now, there's a name for you.
Right. He even threw down a $10,000 matching donation. That's some serious donkey dedication.
Hey, you gotta respect the commitment to a good mascot.
No doubt. But all good things must come to an end. And as public comment begins, things take a serious turn. Several residents step up, demanding action over an incident at the Rinconada Library.
This is where the local meets the national.
Right. Exactly. We're talking about anti-Semitism books in the Holocaust section defaced with hate speech. It's horrifying, and unfortunately, it's part of a larger trend we're seeing across the country.
And it forces a community like Palo Alto to confront a really difficult reality.
Right. And it wasn't just about condemnation either. Another speaker, representing a group of residents, cautioned against using too broad a brush when defining anti-Semitism.
Which is an important conversation to have, even if it's uncomfortable.
Totally. They pointed out how criticizing Israeli policies can sometimes get mislabeled as anti-Semitism, and that's just not accurate or fair.
Nuance is important, especially with these sensitive topics.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving on from donkeys and difficult conversations, remember the whole El Camino Park rezoning saga. Well, buckle up because there's a plot twist. Councilmember Venker just recused herself from the entire discussion.
Talk about a red flag, right?
Right. Her reason: ties to Stanford. And when you're talking about a land use deal that involves Stanford, well, you can see why people might raise an eyebrow.
Transparency is key, especially in local government. Even the appearance of a conflict of interest can really erode public trust.
No kidding. So about El Camino Park, the whole thing hinges on this plan to punch Quarry Road right through a chunk of the park, connecting it to the transit center.
On paper, it probably looks pretty good.
Oh yeah, all these transit agencies are lining up to sing its praises, smoother commutes, better connections, you name it.
But as we know, the devil's in the details.
And the details are not pretty, at least according to some residents. We're talking about accusations of a land grab, outrage over potentially sacrificing park space for yet another road.
It's that classic clash between progress and preservation.
Totally. Some residents are even calling that section a useless acre, their words, not mine, and demanding the city dedicate more parkland to make up for the potential loss.
You can't put a price on green space, some would argue.
Tell that to Stanford because they just entered the chat
Yeah.
with a very large checkbook in hand.
Oh, the power of deep pockets.
Right. They're offering a cool $4 million to sweeten the deal, promising to help fund the road construction and even extend the lease on those playing fields they use in the park.
It's a smart move. Strategically speaking, they're anticipating pushback and trying to get ahead of it.
But it does make you wonder, should community benefits hinge on which institution has the deepest pockets?
It's a question worth pondering, for sure. But for now, we've got bigger fish to fry, or rather more tracks to lay, because it's time to tackle the behemoth that is rail-grade separation.
Oh boy, yeah. This one's a doozy.
It's like they took every transportation headache imaginable and crammed it into one agenda item.
Churchill, Charleston, Meadow, all these different railroad crossings, each with a million different options. Tunnels, bridges, closures. It's enough to make your head spin.
And this is where it's so easy to get lost in the weeds of technical jargon and engineering feasibility studies.
Right. But what we can't lose sight of, and what often gets drowned out in these discussions, is the human impact. We're not talking about abstract lines on a map. We're talking about people's homes, their commutes, their daily lives.
It's about understanding that every decision, every bridge built, every tunnel dug, has ripple effects throughout the entire community.
And judging by the public comments, people are fired up. We're talking eminent domain fears, last-minute discoveries, accusations of being left out of the loop. It's intense.
Which is understandable, right? These are their lives, their neighborhoods we're talking about.
Exactly. And through all of this chaos, one solution emerges as the frontrunner: the Seal Avenue Tunnel. But why this option? What are the potential downsides? This is where you come in, my friend. Connect the dots for us.
Well, the Seal Avenue Tunnel is a perfect example of how seemingly unrelated issues can become deeply intertwined. On the surface, it's a solution to a traffic bottleneck. But as we dig a little deeper, we see how it connects to those broader conversations we've been having about pedestrian safety, neighborhood character, and even the legacy of past infrastructure decisions.
It's all connected.
Exactly.
So we've got the Seal Avenue Tunnel, right? On paper, problem solved. But something tells me it's not that simple.
Well, because you've got to consider the human element. A tunnel might make sense from a traffic flow perspective, but how does it feel to actually walk or bike through there?
Exactly. It's one thing to talk about safety in terms of sight lines and lighting, but it's a whole other thing to feel safe.
Especially when you have incidents like that awful assault on California Avenue still fresh in everyone's minds. That kind of event, it casts a long shadow.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about those bike path debates from the June 3rd meeting. Remember how passionate people were about separated bike lanes, keeping cyclists safe from traffic?
And now we're talking about potentially funneling them into a tunnel. Yeah, I could see how that would feel like a mixed message.
It's like, we want you to bike, but also maybe avoid this giant underground tunnel.
Right. It highlights the need for a cohesive vision in urban planning. You can't just address things piecemeal. It's all interconnected.
It's like that game, what's it called? Kerplunk. You pull out one little stick and suddenly everything's collapsing.
Perfect analogy. And speaking of interconnected, these Palo Alto meetings, as quirky and hyperlocal as they seem, they actually tap into these universal tensions that every city grapples with.
It's true. You've got development versus preservation, individual rights versus the common good. It's enough to make your head spin.
And don't forget the eternal struggle, trying to balance progress with equity, making sure everyone benefits.
Which is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think this is a good takeaway for our listeners. These meetings, as juicy as they are, they're just a tiny piece of the puzzle.
It's like peeking through a keyhole. You get a glimpse of what's going on, but there's a whole lot happening behind closed doors.
Exactly. The real work, the lobbying, the deal-making, the conversations that actually shape these decisions, that's all happening between meetings.
So attending these meetings, while important, it's just one way to engage with your local government.
Right. You can contact your council members directly, get involved with local organizations. There's so many ways to make your voice heard.
Because ultimately, these decisions, whether it's about a park, a tunnel, or the future of a whole neighborhood, they impact all of us.
It's about shaping the kind of community we want to live in, and that's something worth fighting for, or at least, sending a strongly worded email about.
Hear, hear. So, to our listeners, we leave you with this.
Yeah.
What's happening in your own backyard? What are the under-the-radar issues that are shaping your community?
Get curious, ask questions, and most importantly, get involved. Because as we've seen here in Palo Alto, local politics, it's anything but boring.
And who knows, you might even find it strangely addictive.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Catch you next time for another fascinating journey into the world around us.